Winnie Mandela, A Life Well Lived, 1936 to 2018. Winnie Mandela said, "I will always prick their consciences, and I will always remind them of the painful past they want us to forget. I will always be that person who makes their consciences when they want to pretend that everything is fine. South Africa is free." South Africa's anti-apartheid activist and liberation hero Winnie Mandela died at the age of 81 after a long illness. She was born as Nomzamo, one who strives, Winfreda Madikizela in 1936, and later became the face of the struggle against apartheid alongside her husband Nelson Mandela. Winnie's parents were Columbus and Gertrude Madikizela from the Transkei area and Wexosa. She grew up in Cape Province, and Winnie's mother died when she was just 9 years old. Most black people migrated to urban areas in those days from different tribal lands, especially to Johannesburg, which was the epicenter of South African life, and Winnie was no exception. She studied social work at the Jan Hofmeyr School and earned a degree in social work in 1956. Several years later, she earned a bachelor's degree in international relations from the University of the Witwatersrand. Winnie was an educated woman in her own right and the first university-trained black social worker in Johannesburg, among the few educated elite of the city. She married then 39-year-old Nelson at the age of 23, and at the time Nelson Mandela was divorced and facing charges of treason. The charges against Nelson may have made most people nervous, but not Winnie. She believed in him, and the two married in 1958. Winnie and Nelson dreamt of and collectively fought for a new South Africa, but they could not get there together. After all the struggles that she did not get to enjoy being the First Lady of the Republic of South Africa. Part of the rift in between Winnie and Nelson was in the change in ideology and pressure from Western donors and ANC leaders that contributed to their divorce. Due to her political activities, Winnie was regularly detained by the South African government. She was tortured, subjected to house arrest, kept under surveillance, held in solitary confinement for over a year, and banished to a remote town. She emerged as a leading opponent of apartheid during the later years of her husband's imprisonment from 1963 to 1990. For many of those years, she was exiled to the town of Brandfort in the Orange Free State and confined to that area except for the times she was allowed to visit her husband at the prison on Robben Island. Beginning in 1969, she spent 18 months in solitary confinement at Pretoria's Central Prison. It was at this time that Winnie Mandela became well known in the West. She organized local clinics, campaigned actively for equal rights, and was actively promoted by the ANC as a symbol of its struggle against apartheid. In the past few decades, there's been a concerted effort by the West to mischaracterize Winnie as a radical and to diminish her place in South African history. History in the West continues to glorify the legacy of a peaceful Mandela, but in South Africa, it is the legacy of Mama Winnie that needs to live on if South Africa is to ever become totally free. Many of Winnie Mandela's ideas are now embraced by the youth in the fight for economic independence. At the time of her death, Winnie Mandela had 2 children and 8 grandchildren.